Okay, welcome back everybody. Let's go ahead and let's switch on over so we can do some reading tonight. Welcome back, thank you. Welcome back, welcome back. Hopefully everybody had a good night. I mean, a good little break, not a good night. We're just starting. We're just starting. We're not going anywhere just yet. Not yet. Let me go ahead and let me do that. All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. All right. Let me actually, I'm going to do, and let's see, really quick. Okay, there I go. Much better. Alright, so that's how that works. Perfect. Alright, we are on chapter 8 of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. If you guys would like to join us on the story, you can do exclamation point book, and you can get the link that way. There is a link to the story. And like I said, we're on chapter 8. And we will be continuing from there. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for the follow over on, for the lurk over on YouTube. We're probably only going to do about 2 chapters before we call it a night. But I would really appreciate it if you guys can keep a channel open over on the YouTube side. Only if you're able to. Alright. Let's settle in and let's do some reading. Chapter 8. Mobilis in mobili. So those of you who were not here since the beginning, we are reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. We do story time every Tuesday. And where we are so far in the story is the professor and his manservant Conceal are on a boat with a bunch of other fishermen, or sorry, whalers, looking for what can only be described as a monster that is piercing holes into the side of boats. And people believed for the longest time that it was just like a monster of some sort. And the professor said it's probably just an enormous narwhal, which is the whale, like the really big white whale that has like the unicorn horn on its nose. So he was saying that it's probably one of those, but it's like an enormous, like an abnormal size with a really, really long, tough horn. So while he's on the boat for scientific reasons, he wants to be on the boat to go out and try and find the narwhal. I love ASMR story time streams. I'm glad. I do them every Tuesday. We just finished reading Dracula, and now we're reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. After this story, it'll be up to you guys to help me pick the next book. Modest Leo, thanks so much for the follow. Welcome in. How are you? Oh, actually, that needs to be much lower. There we go. Thank you so much for the follow. Hope you're doing well. And so what ends up happening is, while on this ship with the other whalers, they go about 6 months not finding anything, and suddenly one night, there it is. but it has this weird glow to it, and they still kind of think it's a whale until eventually the creature slams into the side of the ship and knocks the professor off. And the professor's manservant Conceal jumps off of board with him. And while they're both trying to make their way back to the boat, Conceal admits to the professor they don't think the ship will be able to turn around to help them, because it looks like their rudder, the device that they need to steer, was destroyed. So they're stuck in the middle of the ocean with no way to get back to the boat. And there's this monster that attacked the ship. So they're swimming their hardest to try and get back to the ship because it's moving, but it's at a pace that they could maybe catch up with. And so eventually what happens afterwards is they come across one of the other whalers named Ned, who's on some kind of like island, like a weird, really hard island in the middle of nowhere. So because he was also knocked off, so the professor, Conceal, and Ned are on this island, and it turns out it's made out of metal. So they knock on the metal after some time, and because they can hear movement down below, and they're just like, I think this is the thing that attacked the ship. So they knock on the metal, and eventually people come out of what we know, right, to be a submarine. So they come out of the submarine and bring the professor, Conceal, and Ned into basically the belly of the beast. So that's where we left off, and we're going to pick up from there on chapter 8, Mobilis in Mobili. This brutally executed capture was carried out with lightning speed. My companions and I had no time to collect ourselves. I don't know how they felt about being shoved inside this aquatic prison, but as for me, I was shivering all over. With whom were we dealing? Surely with some new breed of pirates, exploiting the sea after their own fashion. The narrow hatch had barely closed over me when I was surrounded by profound darkness. Saturated with the outside light, my eyes couldn't make out a thing. I felt my naked feet clinging to the steps of an iron ladder, forcibly seized. Ned Land and Conceal were behind me. At the foot of the ladder, a door opened and instantly closed behind us with a loud clang. We were alone. Where? I couldn't say, could barely even see or imagine. It was all darkness, but such utter darkness that after several moments, my eyes were still unable to catch a single one of those hazy gleams that drift through even the blackest nights. Meanwhile, furious at these going-ons, Ned Land gave free rein to his indignation. "Damnation," he exclaimed. "These people are about to be hospitable as the savages of New Caledonia. All that's lacking is for them to be cannibals. I wouldn't be surprised if they were, but believe you me, they won't eat me without my kicking up a protest." "Calm yourself, Ned, my friend," Conceal replied serenely. "Don't flare." Oh, this is Conceal, sorry. "Calm yourself, Ned, my friend," Conceal replied serenely. "Don't flare up so quickly. We aren't in a kettle yet." "In a kettle, no," the Canadian shot back, "but in an oven for sure. It's dark enough for one. Luckily, my bow knife hasn't left me, and I can still see well enough to put it to use." The first of these bandits who lay his hand on me Don't be so irritable, Ned, I then told the harpooner, and don't ruin things for us with pointless violence. Who knows whether they might be listening to us. Instead, let's try to find out where we are. I started moving, groping my way. After 5 steps, I encountered an iron wall made of riveted boilerplate. Then, turning around, I bumped into a wooden table next to... Hold on. Next to... Oh, you guys maybe leave my spot. Dang it, I lost my spot. Hi, Silas. Hi, Netu. Welcome in. Thank you so much for the raid. Hi. How was stream? What were you guys playing? Gunfire Reborn. Were you guys playing together? Wait. Hi, Netu. Welcome in. Let's see. Netu, Gunfire Reborn, and how was it? Yeah, so this is teaching me. Wait, you guys, that's a collab game? I thought that was a single person. Welcome on in, Raiders. Welcome to Favorite Cafe. I'm Mukia. I'm a siren with a necrotic affliction, and I run a cafe. If you guys would like a drink, we could do tea, boba, coffee, hot cocoa. However, the cake is extra. Hope you guys had a good time. Is reading. I am. Lucia, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome in. How are you? If you guys need to raid and run Netu and Silas, I understand. But if you want to look and hang out, you're more than welcome to. Just make sure to do after stream care. Eat food, drink water, take a shower, because you're stinky gamers. Whatever it is that you need to do for yourself, please make sure to take care. I am reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And if you'd like to join us, just do !book and you get the link that way. Character model is so cool. I love the color scheme. Thank you. I'm glad you approve. Let's see. We were doing this one. Alright. Jules Verne. Yes. I'm actually really enjoying our full Jules Verne tonight. Thank you for the kiss. Hi, Jello. Welcome in. But not too, Silas. I'm going to go ahead and get back into the story. We are on chapter 8, if you guys would like to join us. Hi, Drac. Stop by for a book reading. Haven't slept in a while. Hi, Drac. It has been a while. Yes, do read. I won't be here listening. Okay, thank you, guys. Mwah. Lovely to see you two again. Alright. I started moving, groping my way. After 5 steps, I encountered an iron wall made of riveted boilerplate. Then, turning around, I bumped into a wooden table next to which several stools had been set. The floor of this prison lay hidden beneath thick hempen mat that deadened the sound of footsteps. Its naked walls didn't reveal any trace of a door or window. Going around the opposite way, Conseil met up with me, and we returned to the middle of this cabin, which had to be 20 feet long by 10 wide. As for its height, not even Ned Land, with his great stature, was able to determine it. Half an hour had already gone by without our situation changing, when our eyes were suddenly spirited from under darkness into blinding light. Our prison lit up all at once. In other words, it filled with luminescent matter so intense that at first I couldn't stand the brightness of it. From its glare and whiteness, I recognized the electric glow that had played around this underwater boat like some magnificent phosphorant phenomenon. After involuntarily closing my eyes, I reopened them and saw that this luminescent force came from a frosted half-globe carved out of the cabin's ceiling. Have a good night, Silas, and thank you so much for the resub. Puzzling to mention this table over his future IKEA build. He is. Yeah, good night, Jello. Finally, it's light enough to see, Ned Land exclaimed, half in knife in hand, staying off the defense. Yes, I replied, to venture the opposite view. But as for our situation, we're still in the dark. Master must learn patience, said the emotionless Conceal. This sudden illumination of our cabin enabled me to examine its tiniest detail. I continued only a table and 5 stools. Its invisible door must have been hermetically sealed. Not a sound reached our ears. Everything seemed dead inside this boat. Was it motion or stationary on the surface of the ocean, or sinking into the depths? I couldn't tell. But this luminous globe hadn't been turned on without good reason. Consequently, I hoped that some crewman would soon make an appearance. If you want to consign people to oblivion, you don't light up their dungeon. I was not mistaken. Unlocking noises became audible. A door opened, and 2 men appeared. One was short and stocky, powerfully muscled, broad-shouldered, robust of limbs, the head squat, the hair black and luxuriant, the mustache heavy, the eyes bright and penetrating, and his whole personality stamped with that southern-blooded zest that, in France, typified the people of Provence. The philosopher Diderot has very aptly claimed that a man's bearing is the clue of his character, and his stocky little man was certainly a living proof of this claim. You could sense that his everyday conversation must have been packed with such vivid figures of speech as personification, symbolism, and misplaced modifiers, but I was never in a position to verify this because, around me, he used only an odd and utterly incomprehensible dialect. The second stranger deserved a more detailed description. Hi, Belle, how are you? A disciple of such character-judging anatomists as Greulet or Ingle could have read this man's features like an open book. Without hesitation, I identified his dominant qualities. Self-confidence, since his head reared like a nobleman's above the arc formed by the lines of his shoulders, and his black eyes gazed with icy assurance. Calmness, since his skin, pale rather than ruddy, indicated tranquility of blood. Energy shone by the swiftly knitted muscle of his brow. And finally, courage, since his deep breathing denoted tremendous reserves of vitality. Sloth! Hi, Sloth! Welcome in. How was stream? Hopefully it was good. Welcome on in, Raiders. Welcome to Favorite Cafe. I'm Mukya. I'm a siren with a necrotic affliction, and I run a cafe. If you guys would like a drink, we could do tea, boba, coffee, hot cocoa. However, the cake is extra. How did it go? Hopefully you had fun. What were you playing? Let's see, Poppy Playtime. Are you doing the new chapter? Did you get past the new chapter? Hi, Sloth. And now I get to be cozy. Yeah, get nice and cozy, Belle. Fortune Selma, thanks for the check-in. Way too late, need to stop playing fishing. Yeah, get your sleep, Belle. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out. Chapter 5 was sadly very underwhelming. Just starting. But yeah, Sloth, if you need to raid and run, I understand. But if you want to lurk and hang out, you're more than welcome to. Just make sure to do after stream care. Trucks, have a good lurk. Thanks so much for coming in. Okay, drink some water. All right. I wanted to give everyone a cozy stream to end the night into. Goober Siren. Wow. You're talking about yourself, right? A goober? How you been? Good, 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 good. Tired, very tired, but doing good. That's for. Oh. Hmm? 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 I don't know where you kissed me. Wait, hold on. Is it a belly kiss? Did you kiss me on the belly? Nope. Is it on my arms? No. It's not on my neck. It's not on my arms. I don't know where it could be. It's a secret where it is. It's true. Feet? No. We don't have feet kisses. That's for events. We only do things on the feet when there's events. Let's see. Is it... Let me double check this. Yep, it's on the right one. I don't know where it went. This happens every so often. Oh, thank you for the head pat. Sniffer. Ew. Don't sniff my feet, that's gross. Let me see. If I do this, if I do that, I don't even see it. I'm trying to like, hold on. If I do this, okay, and I do that. It's not on my hands. Did you get the one where like it just doesn't do the kiss? That's crazy. Okay, let's go ahead and reposition. Alright. What I'm going to do for you then is I'm going to go ahead and... There you go. Okay, there you go, men's form. Pushnomics. And kiss the dirt. You know what? That could be that. It could be that. Velvet, thank you for the hug. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's get back into the story. I might add that this was a man of great pride, that his calm, firm gaze seemed to reflect thinking on an elevated plane, and that the harmony of his facial expressions and bodily movements resulted in an overall effect of unquestionable candor. According to the findings of physiognomicists, whose analysts of facial character, I felt involuntarily reassured in his presence, and this boded well for our interview. Whether this individual was 35 or 50 years of age, I could not precisely state. He was tall, his forehead broad, his nose straight, his mouth clearly etched, his teeth magnificent, his hands refined, tapered, and, to use a word from palmistry, highly psychic. In other words, worthy of serving a lofty and passionate spirit. This man was certainly the most wonderful physical specimen I had ever encountered. One unusual detail: his eyes were spaced a little far from each other and could instantly take in nearly a quarter of the horizon. This ability, I later verified, was strengthened by a range of vision even greater than Ned Land's. When this stranger focused his gaze on an object, his eyebrows gathered into a frown. His heavy eyelids closed around his pupils to contract this huge field of vision, and he looked. What a look! As if he could magnify objects shrinking into the distance, as if he could probe your very soul, as if he could pierce those sheets of water so opaque to our eyes and scan the deepest seas. Wearing caps made of sea otter fur and shod in sea skill fishing boots, these two strangers were dressed in clothing made from some unique fabric that flattered the figure and allowed great freedom of movement. The taller of the two, apparently the leader on board, examined us with the greatest care, but without pronouncing a word. Then, turning to his companion, he conversed with him in a language I didn't recognize. It was a sonorous, harmonious, flexible dialect whose vowels seemed to undergo a highly varied accentuation. To the other replied with a shake of his head and added 2 or 3 utterly incomprehensible words. Then he seemed to question me directly with a long stare. I replied in clear French that I wasn't familiar with his language, but he didn't seem to understand me, and the situation grew rather baffling. Still, Master should tell our story, Conseil said to me. Perhaps these gentlemen would grasp a few words of it. I tried again, telling the tale of our adventures. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I lost connection for a second. Looks like we're good. I tried again, telling the tale of our adventures, clearly articulating my every syllable and not leaving out a single detail. I stated our names and titles, then, in order, I pronounced Professor Arnois, his manservant Conseil, and Mr. Ned Land, harpooner. The man with calm, gentle eyes listened to me serenely, even courteously, and paid remarkable attention. Hi, God Hunter, welcome in. But nothing in his facial expression indicated that I understood my story. When I finished and paid remarkable attention, when I finished, he did not pronounce a single word. One resource still left was to speak English. Perhaps they would be familiar with this nearly universal language, but I only knew it, as I did the German language, well enough to read it fluently, not well enough to speak it correctly. Here, however, our overriding need was to make ourselves understood. Huh. I thought the whole time he was speaking English. Wait, what? Hi, Brandon. Welcome in. How are you? How's your night? I only knew it as I did the German language well enough to read it fluently, not well enough to speak it correctly. Here, however, the overriding need was to make ourselves understood. Okay, I guess the whole time they weren't speaking English? Come on, it's your turn, I told the harpooner. Over to you, Mr. Land. Pull out of your bag of tricks the best English ever spoken by an Anglo-Saxon, and try for a more favorable result than mine. How are you? I'm good. We're doing some reading, Radin, so if I miss your messages a little bit, it's because I am reading a book, but you're more than welcome to relax and get comfortable. Ned needed no persuading and started our story all over again, most of which I could follow. Its content, you know what, they were speaking French because Ned is Canadian, like Quebec Canadian, so that makes sense. Okay, anyways, sorry. Ned needed no persuading to start our story all over again, most of which I could follow. Its content was the same, but the form differed. Carried away by his volatile temperament, the Canadian put great animation into it. He combined vehemently about being imprisoned in defiance of his civil rights, asked by virtue of which law he was hereby detained, invoked rights of habeas corpus, threatened to press charges against anyone holding him in illegal custody, ranted, gestured, shouted, and finally conveyed with an expressive gesture that we were dying of hunger. This was perfectly true, but we had nearly forgotten the fact. Much to his amazement, the harpooner seemed no more intelligible than I had been. Our visitors didn't bat an eye. Apparently, they were engineers who understood the languages of neither the French physicist Arago nor the English physicist Faraday. Thoroughly baffled, after vainly exhausting our philosophical resources, I no longer knew what tactic to pursue. When Conseil told me, if Master will authorize me, I'll tell the whole business in German. What? You know German? Looking tonight very sick. Totally relax and enjoy your night, Gone Hunter. Thank you so much for coming in and lurking. Enjoy your time. Enshrouded, thank you for the follow. What? You know German? I exclaimed, like most Flemish people, with all due respect to Master. On the contrary, my respect is due to you. Go to it, my boy. And Conseil, in his serene voice, described for the third time the various viscuities of our story, but despite our narrator's fine accent and stylish turn of phrase, the German language met with no success. Finally, as a last resort, I hauled out everything I could remember from my early school days, and I tried to narrate our adventures in Latin. Cicero would have plugged his ears and sent me to the scullery, but somehow I managed to pull through, with the same negative result. This last attempt ultimately misfiring, the two strangers exchanged a few words in their incomprehensible language and withdrew, not even favoring us with one of those encouraging gestures that are used in every country in the world. The door closed again. This is outrageous, Ned Land shouted, exploding for the 20th time. I ask you, we speak French, English, German, and Latin to these rogues, and neither of them has the decency to even answer back. Calm down, Ned, I told the seething harpooner. Anger won't get us anywhere. But, Professor, our inescapable companion went on, can't you see that we could die of hunger in this iron cage? Ugh, Conseil put in philosophically. This is really relaxing. Good. Are you trying to get some sleep, Rat? So many languages. Right. I hear the middle finger is an encouraging gesture. Depends on the encouragement. But I agree. Hi, fish. How are you? My friends, I said, we mustn't despair. We've gotten out of tighter spots, so please do me the favor of waiting a bit before you form your views on the commander and crew of this boat. My views are fully formed, Ned Land shot back. They're rogues. Oh, good. And from what country? Roguedom. My gallant Ned. As yet, that country isn't clearly marked on maps of the world, but I admit that the nationality of these two strangers is hard to make out. Neither English, French, nor German, that's all we can say, but I'm tempted to think that the commander and his chief officer were born in the low latitudes. There must be southern blood in them, but as to whether they are Spaniards, Turks, Arabs, or East Indians, their physical characteristics don't give me enough to go on. As for their speech, it is utterly incomprehensible. That's the nuance in not knowing every language, Concealed replied, or the drawback in not having one universal language, which would all go out the window, Ned Land replied. Don't you see? These people have a language all to themselves. A language they've invented just to cause despair in decent people who ask for a little dinner. Why, in every country on earth, when you open your mouth, snap your jaws, smack your lips and teeth, isn't that the world's most understandable language? From Quebec to the Tumont Islands, from Paris to the Antipodes, doesn't it matter? Doesn't it mean, I'm hungry, give me a bite to eat? Conseil put in. There are some people so unintelligent by nature. As he was saying these words, the door opened. A steward entered. He brought us some clothes, jackets, and sailor's pants, made out of a fabric whose nature I didn't recognize. I hurried to change into them, and my companions followed suit. Meanwhile, our silent steward, perhaps deaf-mute, set the table and laid 3 place settings. There's something serious afoot, Conseil said, and it bodes well. Ugh, replied the rancorous harpooner. What the devil do you suppose they eat round here? Turtle livers, loin of shark, dogfish steaks. We'll soon find out, Conseil said. Overlaid with silver covers, various platters had been neatly positioned on the tablecloth, and we sat down to eat. Assuredly, we were dealing with civilized people, and if it hadn't been for this electric light flood over us, I would have thought we were in the dining room of the Hotel Adelphi in Liverpool, or the Grand Hotel in Paris. However, I felt compelled to mention that bread and wine were totally absent. The water was fresh and clear, but it was still water, which wasn't what Ned Land had in mind. Among the foods we were served, I was able to identify various daintily dressed fish, but I couldn't make up my mind about certain otherwise excellent dishes, and I couldn't even tell whether their contents belonged to the vegetable or the animal kingdom. As for the tableware, it was elegant and in perfect taste. Each utensil, spoon, fork, knife, and plate, bore on its reverse a letter encircled by a Latin motto, and here in its exact duplicate, mobilis in mobili, N. Moving within the moving element. It was highly appropriate motto for this underwater machine, so long as the preposition in its translated was within and not upon. The letter N was no doubt the initial of the name of that mystifying individual in command beneath the seas. Ned and Conseil had no time for such musings. They were wolfing down their food, and without further ado, I did the same. By now, I felt reassured about our fate, and it seemed obvious that our hosts didn't intend to let us die of starvation. Hi, Raoul. Welcome in. But all earthly things came to an end. All things must pass, even the hunger of people who haven't eaten for 15 hours. Our appetites appeased, we felt an urgent need for sleep, a natural reaction after that interminable night of fighting for our lives. Ye gods, I'll sleep soundly, Conseil said. Me, I'm out like a light, Ned Land replied. My two companions lay down on the cabin's carpeting and were soon deep in slumber. As for me, I gave in less readily to this intense need for sleep. Too many thoughts had piled up in my mind. Too many insoluble questions had arisen. Too many images were keeping my eyelids open. Where were we? What strange power was carrying us along? It felt, or at least I thought it did, the submersible sinking towards the sea's lower strata. Intense nightmares besieged me. In these mysterious marine sanctuaries, I envisioned hosts of unknown animals, and this underwater boat seemed to be a blood relation of theirs, living, breathing, just as fearsome. Then my mind grew calmer. My imagination melted into hazy drowsiness, and I soon fell into an uneasy slumber. And that's the end of chapter 8. Hayato! The page turn had me bouncing up and down. Yes, there is a page turn sound. Is it too loud? I could always lower it if it's too loud. Or do you like it? Hayato! Hi, Bacon Snack. I'm doing good, Ro. What about you? How's your night? Let's go ahead and let's update the chapter since we are now on chapter 9. Let me see. Here we go. We are on chapter 9. The Tantrums of Ned Land. Let's move it over a bit right here. There we go. No, the book in your lap, it's just watching the pages turn every time. Oh, I forgot that I had my book there. Let me actually put... I think what I'll do is just make... There we go. Much better. Perfect. Yeah, the book turns, of course. Hi, Amieth. Me want off now, my eyes want sleep, and I heard this ASMR really soft voice by Have a good night, Radin. Thanks for coming in and hanging out. Woke up feeling hectic. I need this to get me back to alignment. Get some good rest. Amethyst, lay down and close your eyes. It's been very busy. Get nice and cozy. We're reading tonight, so if I don't look at chat for half a minute, it's because I am reading a book. I'm reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. The book is one of my favorites. It's so cute. Right? I like this book. It's one of my favorites too. I agree. I agree. Alright, do a quick stretch. Oof. It felt good. Drink some water. In chapter 9, The Tantrums of Ned Land. I have no idea how long this slumber lasted, but it must have been a good while since we were completely over our exhaustion. I was the first one to wake up. My companions weren't yet stirring and still lay in their corners like inanimate objects. I'd barely gotten up from my passably hard mattress when I felt my mind clearer, my brain on the alert. So I began a careful re-examination of our cell. Nothing had changed in its interior arrangements. The prison was still a prison and its prisoners still prisoners. But, taking advantage of our slumber, the steward had cleared the table. Consequently, nothing indicated any forthcoming improvement in our situation, and I seriously wondered if we were doomed to spend the rest of our lives in this cage. This prospect seemed increasingly painful to me because, even though my brain was clear of its obsessions from the night before, I was feeling an odd sort of windedness in my chest. It was becoming hard for me to breathe. The heavy air was no longer sufficient for the full play of my lungs. Although our cell was large, we obviously had used up most of the oxygen it contained. In essence, over an hour's time, a single human being consumes all the oxygen found in 100 liters of air, at which point that air has become charged with a nearly equal amount of carbon dioxide and is no longer fit for breathing. So it was now urgent to renew the air in our prison, no doubt the air in this whole underwater boat as well. Here a question popped into my mind. How did the commander of this aquatic residence go about it? Did he obtain air using chemical methods, releasing the oxygen contained in potassium chlorate by heating it, meanwhile absorbing the carbon dioxide with potassium hydroxide? If so, he would have to keep up some kind of relationship with the shore to come by the materials needed for such an operation. Did he simply limit himself to storing the air in high-pressure tanks, then disperse it accordingly to his crew's needs? Perhaps, or proceeding in a more convenient, more economical, and consequently more probable fashion. Was he satisfied with merely returning to breathe at the surface of the water like a cetacean, renewing his oxygen supply every 24 hours? In any event, whatever his method was, it seemed prudent to me that he use this method without delay. In fact, I had already resorted to speeding up my inhalations in order to extract from the cell what little oxygen it contained, when suddenly I was refreshed by a current of clean air, scented with a salty aroma. It had to be a sea breeze, life-giving and charged with iodine. I opened my mouth wide, and my lungs gutted themselves on the fresh particles. At the same time, I felt a swaying, a rolling of moderate magnitude, but definitely noticeable. This boat, this sheet iron monster, had obviously just risen to the surface of the ocean, there to breathe in good whale fashion. So the ship's mode of ventilation was finally established. When I had absorbed a chestful of this clean air, I looked for the conduit, the air carrier if you prefer, that allowed this beneficial influx to reach us, and I soon found it. Above the door opened an air vent that let in a fresh current of oxygen, renewing the thin air in our cell. I had gotten to this point in my observations when Ned and Conseil woke up almost simultaneously under the influence of this revivifying air purification. They rubbed their eyes, stretched their arms, and sprang to their feet. "Did Master sleep well?" Conseil asked me with his perennial good manners. I can't understand any of this. So basically, what's going on is the doctor was wondering how the ship was able to ventilate the air, right? Because we humans, right? Or you humans, I should say. I'm a siren. I can breathe underwater. So humans, they breathe in oxygen and they exhale carbon dioxide, right? If you put yourself in a completely enclosed space where fresh air can't get in, then how do you survive long periods of time underwater like this? So the professor was just thinking, how does the captain of this submarine, right, make it so that people can breathe air? Because he has a crew, obviously. So how do they get fresh air? So he was thinking of different ways to do it through chemical means, where you charge the air with different types of chemicals to clean the hydrogen dioxide. To clean the carbon dioxide to make fresh air, or does he do something else? So he just realized that the submarine breaks the surface of the ocean like a whale does to basically take a really deep breath to bring in fresh air. That's what it does. Did Master sleep well? Conseil asked me with his perennial good manners. Extremely well, my gallant lad, I replied. And how about you, Mr. Ned Land? Like a log, Professor, but I must be imagining things because it seems like I'm breathing in a sea breeze. A seaman couldn't be wrong on this topic, and I told the Canadian what had gone on while he slept. Davhaya's dioxide, true. Good, he said. That explains perfectly all that bellowing we heard when our so-called narwhal lay in sight of the Abraham Lincoln. Perfectly, Mr. Land. It was catching its breath. Only I've no idea what time it is, Professor Anwa, unless maybe it's dinner time? Dinner time, my fine Hoprina. I'd say at least breakfast time because we've certainly woke up to a new day. Which indicates, Conseil replied, that we've spent 24 hours in slumber. That's my assessment, I replied. I won't argue with you, Ned Land answered, but dinner or breakfast, that Seward will be plenty welcome, whether he brings one or the other. The one and the other, Conseil had said. Well put, the Canadian replied. We deserve 2 meals. For speaking for myself, I'll do justice to them both. All right, Ned, let's wait and see, I replied. It's clear that these strangers don't intend to let us die of hunger. Otherwise, last night's evening dinner wouldn't make any sense. Unless they're fattening us up, Ned shot back. I object, I replied. We have not fallen into the hands of cannibals. Just because they don't make a habit of it, the Canadian replied in all seriousness, doesn't mean they don't indulge from time to time. Who knows? Maybe these people have gone without fresh meat for a long while, and in that case, 3 healthy, well-built specimens. Maybe these people have gone without fresh meat for a while, and in that case, 3 healthy, well-built specimens like the professor, his manservant, and me get rid of these ideas, Mr. Land, I answered the harpooner, and above all, don't let them lead you to a flare-up against our hosts, which would only make our situation worse. Anyhow, the professor said, I'm as hungry as all Hades, and dinner or breakfast, not one puny meal has arrived. Mr. Land, I answered, we have to adapt to the schedule on board, and I imagine our stomachs are running ahead of the chef's. The chief cook's dinner bell. Well then, we'll adjust our stomachs to the chef's timetable, Conseil replied serenely. There you go again, Conceal, my friend, the impatient Canadian shot back. You never allow yourself to display. Sorry, you never allow yourself any displays of bile or attacks of nerves. You're everlastingly calm. You'd say your after meal grace even if you didn't get any food for your before meal blessings. And you'd starve to death after rather than complain. What good would I do? Conceal asked. Complaining doesn't have to do good if it feels good. And if these pirates, I say pirates out of consideration for the professor's feelings since he doesn't want to call them cannibals. If these pirates think they're going to smother me in this cage without hearing what cuss words spice up my outbursts, they've got another thing coming. Look here, the Professor Arnois speaks frankly. How long do you figure they'll keep us in this iron box? To tell the truth, Fernand, I know little more about it than you do. Time to sleep. Have a good sleep, Mathies. Thanks so much for coming in and hanging out. Get some good rest. Good night, good night. Mwah. But, in a nutshell, what do you suppose is going on? My nose itches. My supposition is that sheer chance has made us privy to an important secret. Now then, if the crew of this underwater boat have a personal interest in keeping that secret, and if their personal interests is more important than the lives of 3 men, I believe our very existence is in jeopardy. If such is not the case, then at the first available opportunity, this monster that has swallowed us will return us to the world inhabited by our own kind. Unless they recruit us to serve on the crew, Conceal said, and keep us here. To the moment, Ned Land answered, when some frigate that's faster or smarter than Abraham Lincoln captures this den of buccaneers, then hangs all of us by the neck from the trip of a main-mast yardam. Well thought out, Mr. Land, I replied, but as yet I don't believe we've been tendered any enlistment officers. Consequently, it's pointless to argue about what tactics we should pursue in such a case. I repeat, let's wait, let's be guided by events, and let's do nothing, since right now there's nothing we can do. On the contrary, Professor, the harpooner replied, not wanting to give in. There's something we can do. Oh, and what, Mr. Land? Break out of here. Breaking out of a prison on shore is difficult enough, but with an underwater prison it strikes me as completely unworkable. Come now, Ned, my friend, Conceal asked. How would you answer Master's objections? I refuse to believe that an American is at the end of this tether. Visibly baffled, the harpooner said nothing. Under the conditions in which fate had left us, it was absolutely impossible to escape. But a Canadian's wit is half French, and Mr. Ned Land made this clear in his reply. So, Professor Arnois, he went on after thinking for a few moments, you haven't figured out what people do when they can't escape from their prison? No, my friend. Easy. They fix things so they can stay there. Of course, Conceal put in, since we're deep in the ocean, being inside the boat is vastly preferable to being above or below it. But we fix things by kicking out all the jailers, guards, and wardens, Ned Land added. What's this, Ned? I asked, you'd seriously consider taking over this craft? Very seriously, the Canadian replied. It's impossible. Why is that, sir? Some promising opportunity might come up, and I don't see what could stop us from taking advantage of it. If there are only about 20 men on board, I don't think they can stave off 2 Frenchmen and a Canadian. It seemed wiser to accept the harpooner's proposition than to debate it. Accordingly, I was content to reply, "Hi, Katza, welcome in. How are you?" Let such circumstances come, Mr. Land, and we'll see. But till then, I beg you to control your impatience. We need to act shrewdly, and your flare-ups won't give rise to any promising opportunities. So swear to me that you'll keep our situation without throwing a tantrum over it. I give you my word, Professor, Ned Land replied in an unenthusiastic tone. No vehement phrases will leave my mouth. No vicious gestures will give my feelings away, not even when they don't feed us on time. I have your word, Ned, I answered the Canadian. Then our conversation petered out, and each of us withdrew into his own thoughts. For my part, despite the harpooner's confident talk, I admit that I entertained no illusions. I had no faith in those promising opportunities that Ned Land fancied. To operate with such efficiency, this underwater boat had to have a sizable crew. So if it came to a physical contest, we would be facing an overwhelming opponent. Besides, before we could do anything, we had to be free, and that we definitely were not. I didn't see any way out of this sheet iron, hermetically sealed cell, and if the stage commander of this boat did not have a secret to keep, which seemed rather likely, he would never give us freedom of movement aboard his vessel. Now then, would he resort to violence in order to be rid of us? Or would he drop us off one day on some remote coast? There lay the unknown. All these hypotheses seemed extremely plausible to me, and to hope for freedom through use of force, you had to be a harpooner. I realized, moreover, that Ned Land's brooding was getting him madder by the minute. Little by little, I heard those aforesaid cuss words welling up in the depths of his gullet, and I saw his movements turning, threatening again. He stood up, pacing in circles like a wild beast in a cage, striking the wall with his foot and his fist. Meanwhile, the hours passed. Our hunger nagged unmercifully, and this time the steward did not appear, which amounted to forgetting our castaway status for much too long if they really had good intentions towards us. Tortured by the growling of his well-built stomach, Ned Land was getting more and more riled, and despite his word of honor, I was in real dread of his explosion when he stood in the presence of one of the men on board. For 2 more hours, Ned Land's rage increased. The Canadian shouted and pleaded, but to no avail. The sheet iron walls were deaf. I didn't hear a single sound outside. This dead seeming boat. The vessel hadn't stirred because I obviously would have felt its hull vibrating under the influence of the propeller. It had undoubtedly sunk into the watery deep and no longer belonged to the outside world. All this dismal silence was terrifying, for as for our neglect, our isolation in the depths of the cell. I was afraid to guess at how long it might last. Little by little, hopes I had entertained after our interview with the ship's commander were fading away. The gentleness of the man's gaze, the generosity expressed in his facial features, the nobility of his bearing all vanished from my memory. I saw this mystifying individual anew for what he inevitably must be, cruel and merciless. I viewed him as outside humanity, beyond all feelings of compassion, the implacable foe of his fellow man, toward whom he must have sworn an undying hate. But even so, was the man going to let us die of starvation, locked up in this cramped prison, exposed to those horrible temptations to which people are driven by extreme hunger? This grim possibility took on dreadful intensity in my mind, and fired by my imagination, I felt an unreasonable terror run through me. Conseil stayed calm. Ned Land bellowed. Just then, a noise was audible outside. Footsteps rang on the metal tiling. The locks were turned. The door opened. The steward appeared. Before I could make a single movement to prevent him, the Canadian rushed at the poor man, threw him down, held him by the throat. The steward was choking on the grip of those powerful hands. Conseil was already trying to loosen the harpooner's hands from his half-suffocated victim, and I had gone to join in the rescue when I was abruptly nailed to the spot by these words pronounced in French. "Calm down, Mr. Land, and you, Professor, kindly listen to me." Ooh, so it was neither of them that spoke. That's a big hug. Thank you for the hug. Alright, that was chapter 9, and we are now on chapter 10. I only wanted to go for a little while tonight, so we will be ending there for the night. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this story. We did 2 chapters of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I'll be going live again next Monday for some more ASMR. Hopefully I'll be able to post something on YouTube soon, a short video from a script that I have been working on. Either way, thank you YouTube for hanging out with me. I will see you guys